Hi, the Mudbrooker here. I'm going to do some baking today using a corn stick pan, but I am not making cornbread. Before we get started though, I would like to thank my patrons on Patreon and my channel members here on YouTube. My patrons are Kay's Kist, Damian Bamer, Leo, Theodore Engelke, Valentin Tolman, Rudy Valvano, Kiasby, John Wheeler, Sarah, and Jim Price. And my members on YouTube are The Needy Homesteader, Brian's Aquatics, Grampy Lobster, Comfort Doll, Killer Miller, Dizzy D, Concrete Sailors, Kim Everhart, S. Wheatley 27, and Tall Cedars. The support of all you people is greatly appreciated, and in your honor, I'm going to have me a drink of Red Bush before we get started. If you would like to join my channel, there's a button down below that you can click on, and for the low price of $6.99 a month, less money than you can find in your couch cushions, you can become a channel member. I do a members only live stream once a month, and you can join a members only Facebook page where we do giveaways and general information on the subject of cast iron and cooking with it. Here's to you guys. Thank you much for your support. Anyway, cast iron cornstick pans are a hugely popular item. Pretty much every manufacturer that's ever made cast iron cookware has made a cornstick pan. Griswold, Wagner, Birmingham Stove and Range, Favorite, Lodge, you name it, somebody has made it. And they still make them today. Lodge makes brand new ones that you can go down and buy or order directly from Lodge. They cost $20-25 a piece, I think. And even the vintage ones are fairly common and easy to find. And there's a lot of imported ones which are pretty good too. If you're making cornbread with one of these, you can do a little trick that I have shamelessly stolen from Stephen Strawn over on Cast Iron Cookware. Go check him out, he's a really good guy. You fill your corn sticks up with batter, and if you have a matching cornstick pan, you put that over the top and bake it up like that, and you will get full-sized round little corn cobs. You can also find cornstick pans used pretty cheap. This one here I got, this is a Lodge, probably from the late 60s, early 70s. And that cost $9 at a second-hand store. I gotta clean it up yet, but that is a nice little cornstick pan, and it's not very expensive. What are kind of uncommon though are the bigger sized ones. Wagner at least made a big and a small. The small ones are called the junior size. They also made a really small one that they called a tea cake size, I think it was. And those are pretty uncommon. But every now and then you come across one of these bigger ones, so I got that one because you don't come across them that often. Instead of making cornbread with this though, I'm going to use this bigger one to make some hot dog buns. These things make fantastic hot dog buns. Even the smaller ones, the smaller ones work just as good. You use these to mold your hot dog buns, and they work just slicker than hell. So, what I'm going to do, get this stuff out of the way, I'm going to set up my mixer, and we'll make some dough and get on with making hot dog buns. I have everything all measured out and ready to go here. Well, just about all measured out. But what I'm going to have to do is make a double batch. Actually, I'm going to have to make 2 batches of bread and knead them together once they're both kneaded up and mixed together and kneaded up, because my mixer won't quite handle making a full double batch all at once. This is a 5-quart KitchenAid mixer, and if you have a 7-quart, you can go ahead and mix up a double batch. But like I said, I'm going to make 2 batches at the same time because a single batch works perfectly in the regular sized cornstick pans, but since I'm using the bigger one, it's not going to be enough. Not going to be quite enough to fill the bigger sections of that pan. So I'll get 2 batches. If there's anything left over, I'll bake that up along with it and have a little mini loaf of bread. But I'm going to use my basic white bread, sandwich bread type of recipe. It's a real simple recipe. Works real good. I've done this before, but I'll give you a quick rundown of doing it again. You start off with half to maybe a tablespoon of sugar, 2 teaspoons of yeast, I'm using an instant yeast, 1, 2, and something that I'm forever forgetting to do, it helps if you stir the yeast and the sugar together a little bit first. It helps the yeast to dissolve instead of getting little floating clumps. If you kind of mix it up a little bit, it seems to dissolve a bit better. Not that it really matters. If you get a few clumps in there, it doesn't hurt anything. The yeast will still work just fine. Once you got that together, you add a 1.5 cups of warm water. Warm water being between 100 and 110 degrees Fahrenheit. There's 1 cup, or a 1/2 cup rather, 1 cup, and there's a 1.5 cups. I like to proof my yeast. That means you start it before you actually mix in your dry ingredients. That still did clump up a little bit, but like I said, that doesn't really matter all that much. I'm going to let this stand for 5 minutes, let the yeast start working. That way I know everything's good to go. And then I'll be back and we'll add the dry ingredients and start mixing it up. This has been sitting for 5 minutes, and you can see that it's foamed up nice, and the yeast is nice and alive and active. You don't really have to proof your yeast like this first. You can just dump your yeast in dry with the rest of your ingredients usually. But I like to do it anyway. It gives the yeast a little head start, and you know for sure your yeast is good. We're ready to add the dry ingredients. I have here a teaspoon of salt, 4 cups of flour. I'm using bread flour, but all-purpose flour works good. And 2 tablespoons of powdered buttermilk. If you don't have powdered buttermilk, you can use regular powdered milk. And if you don't have regular powdered milk on hand, you can use 1 cup of warm milk and a 1/2 cup of water. Anyhow, I'm going to put this on and we'll start mixing it up. There's one more ingredient to add, and that is about 2 tablespoons of softened butter. A little bit more than that. Oops. Get in there, you. Now I'm going to mix this up until it forms a ball, and we'll see what it looks like then. I have a little extra flour standing by in case I need to add a little bit more. You want to have everything pull away clean from the sides of the bowl. I'll show you that when we get there. And then it's ready to knead. This has been mixing for a couple of minutes, and what I mean by it coming away clean from the sides of the bowl, you can see there's a few little traces stuck to the bowl, but there's no big stickiness to it. I didn't have to add any more flour, so I'm going to be good to go to let this go ahead and knead out for 5 minutes, and I'll be back to show you that. This has been kneading for 5 minutes with the mixer, and you can see that it comes off the dough hook nice and clean. That's always a good sign. That means it isn't too sticky. And the inside of the bowl is clean. Normally I would just grease the inside of this with a little butter or rub some oil on it and put this back in and let it rise right in this bowl, save me having to wash another dish. But since I'm making a double batch, I have a bowl here that's oiled up a little bit, rubbed it with some butter. I'll put this in here, I'll mix up my second batch. Once I got the second batch done, I'll knead the 2 balls together, let it rise for 45 minutes, and then we'll be ready for the next step. and I'll be back when we're ready to do that. My bread, as you can see, has risen quite nicely. I mixed both loaves together into one section, and I'm brushing some melted clarified butter onto my cornstick pan. Greasing one of these up, it works best with either melted butter or oil, and work it into with a brush. That way you get into all the little nooks and crannies and you won't have any problem with things sticking. Get that worked in there nice. I also have a skillet handy because I think I'll have some dough left over, and I'll bake that up when I bake my buns. Anyway, dough is risen up. I'm going to punch it down. Get it out of there. Yeah, that's nice. Set this aside. Grab my rolling pin because I'll need that in a little bit. Got too many things here to juggle all at once. Alright, what we do now is kind of stretch this out to roughly the size and shape of my cornstick pan and press it down into the little compartments. And it helps if you lift one end up a little bit so that you can push the air out as you go. We get that pushed down into all of those slots. Pat her down real nice. I probably could have got away with a batch and a half of bread, but like I said, I have a skillet handy for the rest of it. Well, what we do now is take a rolling pin and just roll it along the top of the cornstick pan. That'll finish pressing those down into the slots, and it'll also cut the edges, hopefully. Might have to go this way with it for a couple of swipes. And now we just carefully peel away some of the extra. This is fighting me a little bit, but since when has one of my videos ever gone exactly the way I had planned? Come on, you. There we go. Usually that slices off there a little bit neater. I'll roll this up. Set this aside for a minute. What we're going to do now is let this rise again for about another 15 or 20 minutes. It doesn't have to double in size again, but you do want it to get to the point where it's definitely risen again a bit. Get these here all put back together. That's good enough. Be a little lumpy, but I like lumpy bread. I'll grease up this pan. Plop my extra dough right in there. And we'll let this all rise again. And I'll preheat my oven while I'm waiting to 350 degrees. Oh, by the way, you'll need to cover them just to keep it from drying out. There we go. Now, let her set 15-20 minutes and we'll be back again. My bread has risen nicely. You can see it hasn't really doubled, but it's definitely puffed up quite a bit. I'm going to put it in a 350 degree oven, and I'm not exactly sure how long this bigger pan is going to take. The smaller ones usually take about 20-25 minutes, so this will probably take about 30 or 35, and it'll probably take a little bit longer for this bread in the skillet. But once we get these done, I'll be back and we'll see what the final result is. And here is the finished product. These took 35 minutes in the oven, and I'll flip them over. You can see they browned up nice on the bottom, and you can see a bit of an impression from the corn stick pan. The bread took 45 minutes, and I brushed the top of it with a little bit of melted butter. Ain't that beautiful? But now I'm going to put these here buns to good use. You just tear one off, slice it open. They're still a bit warm, but I like them a bit warm. I've got some brats all ready to go. Let me grab one here. Got a nice bratwurst. Get a little bit closer to my camera here. I got some homemade sauerkraut. I got a video on that too. I'll put a link in a card or something like that. Get some nice sauerkraut on there. Come on, you. Get a little more. Sauerkraut. A little bit of Dijon mustard, because I'm fancy that way. A few drops of ketchup. Whoops, ooh, a little more than I needed, but there you go. That is a nice hot dog bun. You can make some little mini subs out of these too if you're of a mind to. They're just about the right size. And I hope you enjoyed the video. That's how you make buns in a corn stick pan. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.